message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Hello, welcome to the Evolution of Now. My name is Aubrey Steinberger, and also known as Bree or Tensai Badger. And we have with us this week Jordan.
Heyo.
I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to say something?
Nope. I was up. I have absolutely nothing to say.
Nope.
Oh, okay. We've also got Michael with us.
Good morning.
It's not boring.
And
What are you talking about?
there's
morning.
also someone else. Who was it again?
Oh, I don't
yeah, I
know.
think his name's Chris.
Yeah,
maybe?
something like that. It's close enough.
Oh, okay.
She's quite forgettable.
Yeah, it is. It's sad. I am very forgettable, I guess. Schmall wang. Oh, I'm gonna cry now. But anyway.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Anyway,
Don't care.
So
Don't care. That's what that just said to me. They do not
Yeah,
care
basically.
about me. Sad.
I'm sorry. Did you say something?
Damn.
All right. Michael, I think you had a story to start us off with tonight.
Just two clarifications, because there's been a couple of news stories going around I wanted to address. So one is, Porton Down recently made a statement. Porton Down is the UK's chemical weapons lab. You might ask why the UK has a chemical weapons lab, but they have a lab in the UK which is dedicated to studying chemical weapons. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But they made a statement. They've studied the Novichok chemical, and they made a statement saying they can't. It's definitely Novichok, and they don't know where it came from. The thing is, Porton Down are a chemical lab. They've done a chemical analysis and can't tell from the chemical analysis where the chemicals come from. That doesn't mean we don't know where the chemicals come from. It just means there's nothing in the chemistry to tell us. There's a lot of people claiming this means that there's no case against Russia at all, when that's not actually true. In fact, what they did conclude was that said the poison has been identified as a military-grade Novichok nerve agent, which could probably only be deployed by a nation-state. A nation-state. And let's be honest, there's not many nation-states it could be.
Like, when it comes to like a chemical weapon like this, I would assume that they could figure out or they know at least when, like, with specific chemical weapons like this one, they know what they're made up of, and then you can just track who has these different components of that chemical weapon, right? And
the chemical product, the chemicals make up ingredients that are quite common.
All right.
You need a specialist facility to make it, but the actual ingredients are quite common things, fertilizers and things like that.
Oh, okay.
They do know that it was made recently, because the chemical only lasts a few years before it decays. So it's not like it's. So one theory at first was that it came from like a Cold War storage. That's not possible. It's been made in the last few years. So whoever's made it, whichever nation state has made it in the last few years. Yeah. The other one was there's a recent news story saying that London has more homicides than New York. It's kind of misleading. The reason I want to clarify is because the right wing has jumped on it, saying that gun-free London is now more dangerous than New York, and it's not actually true. Yearly, the rate of homicides in London is actually about half of New York. In February, London had a spike in knife crimes, and that's where this stats come from. So in February, London just peaked over the violent crime rate in New York, whereas usually London's violent crime rate is about half of New York.
Weird.
The real story is that violent crime in New York is falling, and violent crime in London is rising. In New York, it's partly due to things like gun control policies, as well as better policing policies and stuff. And in London, it's largely because the Tories insist on cutting police. They've lost 25% of their funding, and obviously that's going to cause problems.
Are you saying that having less cops in the field makes it easier or even more possible for people to commit crimes and get away with it. So more crimes just happen.
This is a hard train of logic, massive leap of logic. So just bear with me here, okay?
Okay.
If you remove 25% of the police's funding, the police aren't as good at their job anymore.
Wow.
Boom.
I can't tell how that works. It's weird.
Yeah, that's really hard.
Sure.
I know it's difficult, but, just...
That almost seems too easy.
But I mean...
Especially when that's paired with, like, education cuts and social services cuts and cuts to other things,
Yeah, I was going to actually draw a comparison between us over here with education when we keep defunding our public schools and then saying that, oh, you see that? They're failing. It's weird that they're failing when we keep on cutting their budgets year after year after year after year and never actually giving the teachers themselves any reasonable amount of income for them to do their jobs, while also, relying on them to buy supplies for themselves. And now they can't even do that very easily since Trump and his cronies have gotten rid of a loophole that helped those teachers do that in the tax code.
Yeah, it wasn't a loophole, but teachers could write off school supplies on their taxes. So if you bought a pack of pens for your students for a school or some paper or something, you could write that off in your taxes.
Yeah, maybe loophole was the wrong word there.
Yeah. Whereas you can't now.
Yeah. But, I saw a story earlier which basically implied that there are private police forces in the UK. Is that actually a thing?
Yeah. As far as I know, there's no power of arrest yet. But one of the big problems, the other problem, aside from cutting police in general and having less police, is the amortization of the police and the farming out of the police, the public police force, to private companies to do things like security and investigations and things, which A, is more expensive, and statistics show is less effective. And whenever you get non-police doing police work, you tend to get more police brutality, less effective policing.
Would you say that these private police forces were...
and they cost more.
Are they like corporations that are maybe doing this for profit in some way?
Yeah, G4S, mainly.
It's weird.
Yeah, who has a massive stake in the Tory party.
Gee, I wonder if that's connected, maybe. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
I'm not sure, really.
What they call the amortization of the police, where you had jobs that were done by a fully trained police officer now being done by volunteers or, less trained people, non-police.
That's what happens.
It's like your police force is moving to be more like our police force.
Yeah.
Except privatized.
Over here, I think it's 2 years the police have to do. It's either a year or 2 years training the police have to do before they're qualified to be police.
It's weird. It's
and
as
then
if
as they go up the ranks.
It's as if whenever
I believe they need the equivalent of a degree in policing.
Damn it, Michael. It's as if whenever you put a profit motive in some job like this, they try and dumb down the work to a level where they can just get some random person off the street to do it. What's a good example? Power plants, where there's all this really intricate machinery and stuff, and if you fuck things up, things get fucked up really badly. 5 Mile Island, or was it 3 Mile Island? I think it was the place. They had a meltdown because the guys that were doing the overnight staff just weren't trained well enough in a lot of regards. So that is right there the reason why the for-profit model just doesn't work in some industries, especially in that one.
About healthcare, I can see the argument for some places to have parts of the healthcare system being private. There is a way to make that work. In education, I can see how private schools might be used as part of a school system. I thought everyone was on the same page on this, that the police and the justice system should not have any private involvement whatsoever. It's the justice system. I don't know how to explain this.
Yeah. We can't turn it into a business. I mean, like that's just the end all be all of the whole thing. It's just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
such a fundamental system that's. I struggle to think of how to explain why the justice system should not be privatized,
right.
and the police force of all people. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a decent example of the problems that can arise from privatization is private prisons in the U.S., which has, the profit motive is to fill up the prisons and keep them that way so that they can keep on incurring taxpayer dollars and money coming from the state. And, so that's not very helpful, to society. You want to do the opposite. But if you turn it into a business, then it's essentially encouraging them to, lock up people for whatever reason, just so that they can fill up space so that they can make more money.
Yeah. I think those corporations want to fill up the jails and everything because obviously that's where they get money from. But what it does foster a lot of the time, especially here, is more corruption in government, because then these corporations then lobby very, very hardly, with a lot of money to change the laws and even elect people that are more willing to pass legislation in their favor and put judges in place that will lock more people up. And that is the way that it works, unfortunately. And it's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
But we should... what are some of the other stories that we had for the week? I know I saw something earlier today from the Young Turks, actually, about an update on the Pulse nightclub shooting, where it's actually come out now that the trial against the wife of the shooter in the Pulse nightclub shooting a few years ago was being accused of collusion with her husband, and she was acquitted of those charges, though. She was acquitted of terrorist charges and all that. She has been freed to go. Apparently, we all were misled in a lot of ways. The media was misled, so we were all misled on the circumstances of it. At first, everyone was basically jumping on the story that this guy was a closeted homosexual and that he had a secret partner in all this, and that's actually not the case. From what we found out in the trial, he never went to that nightclub ever before, and he only actually found the club a few hours before he made the attack itself. He was planning on attacking somewhere else. I forget the name of it. It was like a Disney something. It was like a giant mall complex or something down there in Florida that he was going to attack. But then he realized it was probably going to have too much security, and so that would be dangerous for him. So he decided to look for clubs in the area, and he happened upon Pulse at that point through a Google search. And this guy was very obsessed with ISIS propaganda, and he had watched a lot of their propaganda videos and everything. And during the shooting, he had communications, I guess, with the police, and he was saying basically, he was talking to them about how innocent people are being killed all the time in the Middle East, and that his people are being murdered over there, presumably by the United States government. And he was sort of basically saying, now you will be able to know how it feels, essentially, that when your innocent people are dying too. And so he was a terrorist, and, it does call into quite stark, clarity what we are doing over there in a lot of our foreign policy, where we are bombing and killing random innocent people, even weddings a lot of the time. And it's horrible when we do it, and it's horrible when someone comes over here and does it too. There's no justification on either side. He shouldn't have done it. we shouldn't be doing those bombings of innocent people over there. But yeah, so that's actually the twist on it. He was never a closeted homosexual. He's not homosexual at all. He'd never even Googled or even like looked at gay porn ever, any of that. So it was very, very interesting clarity on that. That's just my little story that I wanted to bring up.
True. Do you guys mind if I share a story?
No, you can't.
Go ahead.
No,
of course.
No.
I knew it.
I mean, come on.
Why did I even try?
I'm leading today, so I'm overruling both of you guys. Jordan, share your story.
Okay, fine.
Host every week.
You're the boss.
All right, so it's a little quick one. I'm a technology nerd, and it's something that I thought I came across today, and I thought I'd want to share. And so MIT researchers have developed a device that's able to listen and translate the pretty much the words that you say in your head.
That's a lot of nope for me. Just nope.
Yeah.
I think that's a bad idea.
You watched too much Black Mirror. I think we all have, and we can totally see the writing on a wall for something like this.
It could be the beginning of like Thoughtcrime. That's the worry that I have about it.
That's interesting. Yeah, elaborate.
Well, I mean, this has been a worry about a lot of people. Like if the government could get into people's heads, like in 1984, I think was a big part of that. Or if the government can just mandate everyone needs to have these on them at all times, so now we can know what you're thinking at all times. That's dangerous. That's very, very dangerous, and that's an extremely dangerous technology. I mean, it's cool and everything that we can design and create something that can do that, but there's so many deep, disturbing questions about it.
I'm not worried about that just yet. I'd worry about that when they start using it for interrogations. That's the point we need to be worried.
Right.
Because it will. When this technology gets advanced enough, they use it for interrogation.
Similar to? Oh yeah. Okay. Is this similar to what Stephen Hawking used to communicate?
No, he used the keyboard. I believe.
Yeah.
He used his eyes, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, because he'd only take, when he did a talk, he'd have to write up his talk beforehand. And he'd take questions. We'd only get through 2 or 3 questions because someone would ask a question, he'd have to write up his answer, which would take a couple of minutes.
Yeah, he had to use his eyes, I believe, for the keyboard, right?
But
stuff like that.
Yeah, but I mean, this kind of thing can definitely help people who are disabled like that, who can't communicate normally.
Totally.
So I think.
Go on, Badger.
I would just say that, there's the potential for abuse, but there's also potential for a lot of good. And I think a lot of regulations and stuff and protections that are put up around it will be massively important going forward.
Well, that's a really interesting thought, actually, because one of the problems we highlighted in schools is that literacy rates correlate with your performance in school. What that means is the better you are at communicating, the better you are at, the better your performance in school gets. Mm-hmm. So it's possible a lot of people fail school, not because they can't do the subject, but because they can't communicate. Either they can't understand what you're saying, or they can't communicate back to you the answer.
However,
so they fall behind because of that. If you had a technology like this, which could help someone communicate who can't normally anyway, this is why a lot of SEN kids struggle.
I guess
because they struggle to communicate.
One question I would have, though, with that, though, is like, would that actually make it easier for some people to actually communicate in those kinds of situations?
Yeah, a lot of the problem is language. Is
all right.
Writing and typing words and things like this. One of the parts of teaching is separating the language teaching from your subject teaching. So you've got to try and teach for physics for me. I'm supposed to try and encourage good language teaching, but I'm supposed to separate that as well out from subject knowledge and the language literacy knowledge. So I can encourage the literacy knowledge, but try and understand if people understand the subject without the literacy. It's very difficult.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's people don't generally, as much as like you feel like your thoughts are in one language or another, generally speaking, your thoughts are actually in ideas, which your brain then translates into language.
Steven Pinker had a
so it
really
depends
good
on how
talk.
this technology works.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Steven Pinker had a talk on this on Big Think. I think it was Big Think. But yeah, it's a full hour-long talk, but it's really interesting. And he discusses this about our brains don't think in a language. We think we do, but they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. And just to really quickly just go over the, I guess, the technology behind it, or how it's done. It's really quite simple, actually. So pretty much there's a fancy word for talking inside our heads, and it's called subvocalization, which is when you're reading a book and you get, you're essentially, you hear it in your head, but you're obviously not audible. Externally, and what this it's like a piece that kind of travels alongside your face, from your ear down to your chin, and there's like almost a mouthpiece that sits right under your lip, and so essentially, whenever you subvocalize, the device emits electrodes which measure the neuromuscular signals that are triggered when you subvocalize, and so it's up, and then from that point on, it's up to the software to deconstruct it and and
so it's similar
output.
To a heart monitor then.
Yeah.
There's a type of heart monitor which does a similar thing, where it monitors the nerves coming into the heart to tell if there's a problem, with the way your heart's working.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
It's just
exactly.
I still I have the doomsday worry about it, where it could be leading to 1984. That's just my worry about it.
Yeah.
Well,
and
right.
that's why I said that the regulations, where it's allowed to be used, what kind of instances, that sort of thing, is going to be massively important going forward.
Yes. And you see some. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Jordan.
Oh. Well, and that's an important thing to bring up, because I think you notice how regulation kind of nudged through when it came to drones. When it was, in its infancy, a lot of people were theorizing exactly how, the dangers of flying a drone and what it can be used for. And then that's when regulation came through, and there's actually certain designated areas where you can't fly a drone. And it's actually very limited in terms of the areas where you're allowed to fly them in, for personal use. So yeah,
the military can just use them anywhere they want on the planet. But
yeah.
Yeah, that's
the problem when you start weaponizing these technologies.
Yeah, and like I said, that's the worry. If a government entity starts weaponizing this thought technology here, that can be a terrifying dystopia. Like all of the movies we ever see in the theaters where it's a dystopian society where everything's supposed to be perfect and pure. Oh, you don't think like everyone else. You're different. You're bad and you're evil and we have to kill you now, kind of thing. It's just like, that worries me. That just worries me. I don't know.
Yeah. Touche.
But, do we have any other stories before we got to the main topic here, guys?
I think Badger wanted to segue into it with one, didn't she?
Yeah, I have a story that kind of segues into the main topic, so if anyone else has another story before then.
Nope. I'm good.
No? Okay. So, Trump's trade war. Yay.
Big league trade war. It's going to be the best trade war ever.
Trade wars are good and easy to win.
It's going to be the best ever. Big league.
Yeah. So last Friday, China said it would impose tariffs on $3 billion worth of American-produced fruit, pork, wine, seamless steel pipes, and more than 100 other goods. So that really impacts my state in particular, Iowa, because we're the nation's largest pork producer. But yeah, so and China imports a lot of pork. a lot of it from Iowa.
What state is Joni Ernst from, by the way?
Iowa.
Thought so. Anyway,
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah. She's from Red Oak. Everybody in Red Oak is crazy.
Well, just
My mom's
for,
words, not mine.
Yeah. Just for context, Joni Ernst is she in the Congress or is she in the House? I forget.
She's in the Senate.
Or Senate,
She's a
that's
senator.
right. Yeah, she's in the Senate.
She took Harkin's spot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But
He retired.
her claim to fame was the advertisements that she ran was like one of the things that she was doing is she is a pork farmer or something like that, I think.
She grew up on a farm that had hogs on it.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was.
So she had, as part of her chores, castrated pigs.
Yeah.
And she talked about that, and then she said she wanted to go to Washington to make them squeal.
Yeah, and she was saying that she knows how to cut pork. Yeah, exactly. She said she knows how to cut pork. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she proceeded to go to Congress and not do any of that.
Obviously.
Which is rather disappointing because, I'd have liked to see Mitch McConnell squeal.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
That'd be helpful. If anyone could do it, but
I think Badger just died there for a second. She's back.
Did I?
Now. Yeah, it sort of like roboted for a second. But,
sorry, our internet's been pretty bad lately.
Sad.
I mean, it's Iowa, so it's always bad, but
not winning.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so that's making a lot of hog farmers very nervous right now. And like they're also proposing a 30%. All right, so right now China has a 30% tariff on ethanol. They're proposing adding an additional 15% to that, so making it basically a 15 or 45% ethanol tariff. Iowa leads the nation in ethanol production, shipping out a record 4.2 billion gallons of the renewable fuel last year. About half of Iowa's corn production is used to make ethanol and dry distillers grain, a feed for livestock. So all this news combined, especially since they're threatening to add a tariff on soybeans as well. The Iowa Soybean Association has stated that there is the potential for as many as 10% of Iowa farms failing by next year.
Wow.
So I mean that's a lot. But I mean that and also going into our main topic this week, which is renewable energy. Ethanol is a much cleaner fuel than oil-based fuels, although it's a lot less what's the word, productive, effective, efficient, something like that.
Yeah, that would probably be efficient. Yeah.
It's a lot less efficient than oil-based products, but it is much cleaner, and it is also renewable, unlike oil. So that could, I mean, given Chinese cars and stuff and their fuel needs, that could be a major blow to the climate as well. If they do add an extra tariff on that, because that would mean Chinese customers would basically shy away from using ethanol. Fortunately, Chinese soy and ethanol companies are very much against adding a tariff on soy, and against adding a tariff. They're not in favor of the ethanol tariff as well. So hopefully that won't get that far. But who knows?
Why did you want to start a trade war? It's just bad for everyone.
I know, it is. It's horrible. It's just...
Wait, everything on all sides is more expensive now. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, and everybody who's like an expert on these things basically says, well, yeah, agriculture was obviously going to be the first line of attack for China because, one, most of what they import from America or from the U.S. is agricultural, and two, they're going to hit essentially space.
Now, to be fair, I think like agriculture is just about the only thing that we produce here in the States anymore, isn't it? Like we don't have much manufacturing anymore here. So I mean, it might be the only thing that we do have to export.
We do have some other manufacturing.
There's a lot of high tech.
Yeah, there's a lot of high tech. Although most of that, like the actual details, are in China. But I mean, like also, like just a lot of food products as well are also made in the U.S. It kind of varies. I mean, a lot of different states have different things that they really specialize in. I mean, here in the Midwest, it's largely agriculture because, I mean, we're the former Prairie, and we've got like the best soil for it. So, at least until we use it up.
I think. Yeah, I think the blueberry capital of the world is here in New Jersey. Just to say, I think that's where it is. But
yeah, agriculture is something that the U.S. is really good at. I mean, from almonds and figs and citrus out in California to like, corn and soy here in Iowa, and Idaho's famous for its potatoes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, every state has an agricultural base underlying everything.
Yeah. I think California has like cow product, right? Or something like that's like their thing. Like they have like commercials all the time for like California milk and dairy and stuff like that, and things. So I mean, that's the one thing that they typically try and get people to know about them, at least.
That is the first time I've ever heard that.
I've seen a lot of commercials about that. I don't know. Maybe it's just here in New Jersey that they air commercials like that.
That might be. I mean, like, I live right next to Wisconsin, so
maybe that's what it is. You just have Wisconsin
is
there.
Definitely known for its dairy products. I mean, like, my roommate's still complaining that. I mean, he's from Wisconsin, and he's still complaining that he doesn't have like he can't go and get like fresh cheese curds.
Sad.
He complains about the price of cheese in Iowa. It's funny. It's like, what? They want me over to pay more than $1 for that? That's ridiculous. No, that's normal. Like, for anyone who's not in Wisconsin. But yeah. Yeah, but anyway. So, anything else?
I don't know. We're moving into the main topic, right? Like,
yeah, the main topic, which is
it's not exactly
renewable
farming, but
no, it's
about farming
related,
yeah,
kind of. I mean,
the segue was the trade war, wasn't it?
Yeah, the trade war. Talking about like the tariffs, but and also about like ethanol in particular. I know I didn't segue it very well, did I? Oh, well, it's my first time.
We never do, so don't worry about it. Like, I don't know where you've been. We've never done very well.
Yeah.
You're just not up to the standard of our usual segues.
Yeah.
This could be your first show or your 100th show.
Or your last.
Last?
Oh, no, not like that. I'm just saying the transition will be rough either way.
No.
I'm not sure if that came through on the microphone, but yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Trump's received a lot of criticism for is renewable energies. For one thing, it's definitely not a priority for his administration. For another thing, his little trade war is also going to massively harm renewable energy, specifically solar, because most solar panels come from China these days. China successfully managed to basically outcompete U.S. solar industries, largely because they supported their solar industry and we didn't. Go figure. So that's going to really hurt solar. But I mean, it is a fledgling industry to begin with for a lot of places. I mean, here in Iowa, there's a bunch of community projects to try to get solar power off the ground. So basically what a lot of these community projects do is they basically buy up a plot of land, they put a whole bunch of solar panels on it, and then you can basically, as an individual in the community, buy into it by purchasing what they call like a power pack, which is generally about either half a panel or an entire panel's production. And then you get a discount on your energy bill based on how much energy that power pack puts out per cycle, usually per month, because that's how our billing works.
So I saw go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I saw someone suggesting this and says it's a great idea. You can pool your money together to pay for, renewable energy and public works projects. And I was like, you've just invented taxes.
Yes.
Right.
That's how taxes are meant to work.
It is. Yes, that is essentially taxes. But it's,
in a functional country, that'd be how taxes work.
Yeah. It's difficult, though, to invest in it sometimes. And sometimes you need investment capital. And basically, that's kind of what these community projects are, is they're basically gathering extra capital to invest in it. And then as one of the investors, you get a credit essentially on your energy bill for your investment. That's kind of like your return. The one in the community I live in, which is Ames, Iowa, so they're predicting that you'll get, $1 to $2 off your power bill every month per power pack, and it's a 20-year contract. So you do have to sign a 20-year contract for it. However, if you move, you can always transfer that to someone else, like the person who bought the place that you lived in, or even just like if you wanted to, you could then transfer it to like a local business or like a charity or something. Some people were wanting to donate it to their churches, stuff like that. But this is something that a lot of people have expressed interest in because they want to invest in renewable energy, but they may not own the land they live on. Like, I'm currently renting. I can't just put up power panels, or I can't put up solar panels. I'd have to talk my landlord into doing it. So that's what, yeah. So, but I
have to get a landlord to repair the boiler, never mind.
Yeah.
Actually, my landlord is unusual in that he's actually really nice and very responsive. Like a lot of times I'll text him and he'll be over like the same day, but
weird.
How much did you pay to say that?
Yeah, I know.
It's an eviction clause if you badmouth your landlord.
Aubrey, is he in the room with you right now and you are just saying this because he's there?
No, I'd be very surprised if he ever found this podcast.
Wow.
Yeah.
No faith in us at all here.
No, I'm saying this isn't the kind of thing he'd probably listen to.
Yeah.
I think he's a Democrat, but he's not like
I see what you're doing here, Aubrey. Just judging people,
Whatever. I've had discussions with him about stuff before.
No, yeah.
But whatever. Anyway, but yeah. So I mean, it's Cedar. Was it Cedar Rapids? Sorry, I'm on the project itself in Ames is called SunSmart Ames. So I'm on that website right now.
I'm just chilling in Cedar Rapids.
Oh. It was Cedar Falls.
Man, that never gets old.
Yeah. Oh man.
Wasn't
it great when
ridiculous.
She was trying to pander to the youngins by trying to use their lingo. I'm just chilling.
Yeah. It was Cedar Falls. Cedar Falls Utilities is offering a similar program.
All right.
Sorry, not Cedar Rapids, Cedar Falls. But yeah, so it's going to be, they've almost got enough people to actually get it off the ground. They currently have 51% investment, and they need to get up to 80% investment to actually get it going. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
This would be that would be really great for Iowa too, because it'll diversify its renewable energy sources, because right now it's so tied to wind. This is that that'll be nice to kind of spread it out a little bit more and increase the amount of renewable energy that they're already receiving.
Yeah, and I mean we get a lot of sunshine, especially in winter, which is ironic because most people don't think of winter as particularly sunny. But I mean, where we are on the plains, the wind just kind of blows those clouds right on past.
Yeah, I mean,
which is part of the reason why we've got like really good wind energy too. But
yeah, just because it's cold and there's snow out there doesn't mean there's not a sun in the sky.
Oh no,
and,
there's It's actually very common for there actually to not be any snow on the ground, but for it to be like extremely cold but look like a bright, warm, sunny day when you look out the window. Then you walk outside the door and you're just like, it's below 0.
It's like a cartoon where you like jump outside in your shorts and your t-shirt, and then you just freeze immediately into an ice cube.
Oh yeah. It would drive me crazy. Like I used to work at a gas station and I worked the overnight shift, and so I'd see people as they were leaving to go to work and then go to school. I'd see teenagers out, going to school, and they're wearing like t-shirts and shorts, and I would just be so pissed off at them because I'm like, God damn it! I know it's like 10 degrees out. What is your problem? What are you doing? It's 10 degrees Fahrenheit.
Well,
Michael. 10 degrees Celsius wouldn't be that big a deal.
Yeah. Did Michael fall asleep again?
He might have.
No, I'm here. Listen.
Oh, okay, there he is.
Okay.
We have to be vigilant these days to make sure he's not going to fall asleep again, like he did at one point. But
yeah.
There's something else I want to point out too, is how how we're noticing these states kind of taking the initiative in place of the federal government. And because of the Trump administration doing all that it can to curtail, any, research and advancement within renewables, that, we're seeing places like Iowa, California, New Jersey as well, start to kind of take the matter into their own hands and produce it on a stateside level, and with little regard to what the federal government is actually doing on it.
A little bit of New York doing that too. I'm not sure if it's the case though in Iowa, because I have seen a lot of things that were saying that Iowa politicians were sort of trying to roll back some of the renewable programs, right?
Well, there is a bill in, I believe, both the House and the Senate. There's 2 different bills which are slightly different from each other, but essentially the same thing. You know how it goes.
State House and Senate, right?
Yeah, State House and Senate, sorry. Basically, what they would do is they would get rid of Iowa's energy efficiency programs. These programs have been in existence, and the law of the land, law of the state, I should say, since the 1990s. And it's actually one of the reasons why Iowans have some of the cheapest energy bills in the nation, because we have a lot of emphasis on energy efficiency, which basically reduces the need for, extra energy costs. We have like tax rebates and tax incentives and stuff like that for basically upgrading your house and making it energy efficient, so that you're not leaking energy all year long.
Yeah, I think
whether that's in air conditioning or in heating. So so that right there means that your energy bills go down, and it means that essentially you don't have to, it saves you more money that way.
Yeah, and I think in Iowa it's actually a bipartisan thing where both sides are actually in favor of like wind and the wind industry there. Even people. Yeah. As crazy as your big friend Stephen King, or Steve King, actually Stephen King, not the novelist, but Steve King, the senator, is also in favor of the wind industry there, probably because he gets paid by them. But Yeah,
well, it's
Does he?
The wind industry, the wind turbines, really breathed new life into Iowa. We are, there's a map on this Des Moines Register article where they talk about wind energy in the United States. And Iowa is, only Texas produces more wind energy than Iowa.
Texas is huge.
And Texas is really huge. Well, I should say Iowa, Oklahoma, and California both are in the more than 5,000 megawatts to 10,000 megawatts. And only Texas is more than 10,000 megawatts. But from what I recall, in actual numbers, Iowa is like second or third. And especially when you consider Iowa is smaller like in size than Oklahoma, which is the smallest of those other states. That's a lot of wind energy.
And what about population density? Do you have numbers on that too? I wouldn't assume that Iowa's population was as high as like Texas, let's say. You know, they probably have a much
Texas
higher
is much
population.
larger.
Yeah.
Well, Texas, it kind of varies depending on where you're talking about. But they definitely have a much higher population than Iowa.
Yeah.
I am not. Oklahoma and Iowa's population might be comparable. I am not certain on that.
Out of curiosity, in the UK, one of the problems with our wind is that the wind comes in the morning and at night because it comes off the sea. Do you have similar problems?
Ours is constant.
Okay. Because I wondered because yours
we're
comes
on the
off,
plains.
comes off the hills, doesn't it?
She's just landlocked there.
Yeah, we're landlocked. It basically the wind goes up and over the Rocky Mountains, and then as it comes down off the Rocky Mountains, it basically gains speed, and then there's literally nothing to stop it until it hits the Appalachians.
Yeah, I thought so because for us, the sun warms up the ocean, and at nights there's sort of there's constantly wind coming from the warmer daytime to the colder nighttime, and so in the morning and night we get high bursts of wind when we're on the border between the two. It's quite cool.
Okay, so
if there's a big plane, I don't think you get that quite as much. So yeah, it's quite constant and quite reliable. That's good.
Yes, it's very reliable. We actually get pretty good wind gusts too, which actually is a downside because they actually turn off the wind turbines when the wind gets blowing too hard.
One of the problems with it is too windy, they can't function.
Yeah. Like today we had a high wind warning. We actually went out walking in it and I got blown backwards. It was kind of funny. But yeah, Oklahoma does have a slightly larger population than Iowa.
All right.
Oh, one more question.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Do you know how climate change is going to affect it?
The wind?
Yeah.
I don't actually.
Because there's some wind currents that won't be affected too much, and there's some wind currents that will, and I don't know if this is one of them. It's a completely out there question, so I don't know if you'd know.
Well, it's most of the time our wind comes from the northwest. I don't really see, and I mean even when the Dust Bowl happened and the wind currents actually shifted, which is part of the reason why we got Dust Bowl, because we had a drought on top of really bad farming practices for like a century. Iowa itself was the northernmost part of the Dust Bowl. Like, we had a little bit of it, like it affected us, but we weren't like in the main part of it, like, you know, like Kansas and Texas and all them. So I don't necessarily know if that's like indicative regarding the rest of that. Like actual wind climates. I know that the way that the winds have been shifting lately, like, I mean, we've had a lot of really cold snaps coming down from Canada. I mean, this winter's been really crazy.
Yeah, it's been a bit mad for us as well.
Yeah, so I mean, we've had a lot of really strong winds this winter. To the point where if it had been snowing at all during some of them, it would have been whiteout conditions.
Sorry about that. I was just curious.
Yeah, so I mean, if anything, that would probably mean that the winds are too strong for modern wind turbines. That would probably be the shift that I would expect, at least in the short term. I don't know about long.
You can build wind turbines to handle higher winds. It's just you have to build them to handle higher winds.
Anyway, but yeah.
We aren't wind or climate scientists here, Michael.
Sorry, I just wondered if you knew. Stop your head.
Yeah.
How dare you, Michael?
But so yeah, it's kind of, but I mean, like I said, wind energy has blown a lot of. I mean, it's really been very beneficial for the state overall. Part of that's because it's brought a lot of industry to the state. Not just in putting up wind turbines, but also in manufacturing them. Like, one of the major wind turbine manufacturing companies in the country, although I think they also export some stuff, is actually located in Iowa. It's located, I believe, Newton, Iowa, is the main place, which Newton itself was on its way to essentially becoming a ghost town after Maytag shut down, because that used to be where the major Maytag plant was before Bain Capital basically shut down Maytag and then sold the remains to Whirlpool. But I had family that lost their job there.
Yeah.
But they moved in, and they're actually looking at buying the old Maytag plant and retrofitting it to turn it into making wind turbines. So there's a lot of it's breathing new life into the state and into our industry in general. So it's been a major boon to the state. So that also explains why a lot of Iowa politicians are really in favor of wind energy, even though they generally otherwise are against renewables, particularly Republicans here. Even our local Democrats a lot of times seem reluctant to invest in renewables. It's a struggle.
And I think from what I've read, though, also, there is actually a growing fervor among just citizens of Iowa about these wind turbines and how people just don't like them around. And there's complaints about them being really loud and noisy. There's also complaints about just them looking really bad, like they're ruining their view of their countryside and everything.
My favorite was that comment where he claimed it ruined the view of the Iowa Prairie, and I just kind of was sitting there going, "There's no Iowa Prairie. There's been no Iowa Prairie for 100 years. What are you talking about?" Yeah. Iowa is the most intensively managed state. Basically, there's very, very little wild land in Iowa.
Yeah.
Certainly not natural wild land, but that one was hilarious to me.
Yeah.
But most of them, you'll notice, are older people who are very resistant to change. It's and a lot of that talk about wind turbines being crazy. It's a bit funny. My roommate, when he first heard that claim, several years ago, they have wind turbines in Wisconsin too. So him and his brothers, they actually hopped in the car and drove out to one of them, and they actually stood right underneath it, and they couldn't hear it going, and it was going pretty strong above them, they couldn't hear a thing.
Yeah. So
I don't know. It's
the way I theorize with that, at least, is that these people just don't like them in whatever reason, and so they're trying to make more reasons why they're justified in not liking them being around. Because it's not good enough to say that, oh, it's just tacky, I don't like the way it looks. That's not enough to really get change in the government to actually get them to be pushed down, because there are nuisance, I think, laws on the books.
Yeah.
But
there are.
Just saying
there's regular settlements that Mid-American and Alliant pay out to these people who complain.
Yeah. So
every year they.
Yeah, it's the same thing with even solar panels in a lot of areas. I think I've seen videos of people here in New Jersey not liking that they're putting solar panels attached to telephone poles, or I guess electrical poles. People think that they're tacky, that they somehow are ruining the atmosphere of their neighborhoods because of them being there, and then since that's not enough, they then go to oh, these can be dangerous, because what if snow and stuff builds up on them and then it can fall on someone, and they're just sort of grasping at things that can potentially be a problem, but you kind of have to be an idiot to stand underneath it, wouldn't you? In the first place, if it has a giant pack of snow on it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
It's just them grasping at straws to try and find new reasons why these things should be taken down. And it's kind of absurd. The one thing I would actually ask about these people, would you rather see these wind turbines there and have clean air, or would you rather there be smokestacks with a coal-fired plant right there instead?
It's worth noticing that smokestacks kill a lot of people every year.
Yeah.
Pollution does.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's...
and just directly from coal mines.
Air pollution is one of the number one drivers behind asthma, increasing asthma rates.
Yeah. And so, like, I think I would personally rather have these giant wind turbines in the background of my my aesthetics here where I live, where I can look out the window and see those things, rather than seeing smokestacks of a coal fire plant. Pretty it's easily, I think I would say I'd rather have that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's some people. I mean, they just want to complain, and they're always going to find something wrong with something new that they don't like. But I mean, some of them, I mean, maybe they just don't like it. The claims about epileptic seizures aren't really, they haven't been substantiated.
Seizures from the wind turbines?
So there's some people that claim that they have had seizures from the shadows of the turbines, which is, I mean, like there's been scientists who've gone out and tried to actually do studies, and they found it's not related. You just have epilepsy. Yeah. It's not caused by the wind turbines. It's unrelated to that.
I mean, it's in a similar grain to like how people think there's a link to autism and and getting what are they? Wow, I can't think of what they're called. Vaccines, yes, exactly. And they're not related, but you're just trying to correlate them. It's the thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, one guy said that he doesn't even notice the turbines because he's got dozens of turbines that are literally just outside his window, but he hardly notices them unless he's checking which direction the wind is blowing. I mean, I've driven up I-35 and down I-80, and there's wind turbines everywhere, especially along I-35.
Does it look really ugly and terrible?
No, it's actually very pretty. Watching them all kind of move in tandem. It's actually...
Wind turbines are really pretty.
Yeah.
There's a whole load of wind farms all the way up to Lancaster, and they're always really nice.
Yeah. And it's kind of something to watch, and stuff when you're, like, bored and driving. And it can be pretty boring driving on the interstate. True. Yes. So I'm not usually driving.
No one's on the roads. It's Iowa.
My excuse.
No one drives on those roads in Iowa. Let's be honest.
Actually, I-35 is humongously busy, as is I-80. Actually, I mean, there's all kinds of truckers especially truckers that go through. But there's also a lot of interstate traffic. I used to work at a gas station that was it was just a mile north of the East Mixmaster, which is called the intersection between I-80 and I-35. And I'd get people from like literally all over the country in that gas station all the time.
Wow.
Yeah. It was especially interesting when there was a lady from New York who she was absolutely shocked at the low cigarette prices, and she bought like 5 cartons.
She's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? These fucking prices are so good up here? What is this?"
Yeah, it was so funny because I was sitting here and I was just like, "Oh, honey, if you think these are cheap, you need to go to Missouri."
Perhaps.
Oh, that was after Iowa's cigarette prices practically doubled after they passed the Clean Air Act.
Yeah. I know here in New Jersey, cigarette prices are supposedly really, really bad. And I've known people to go down south, actually, to buy cigarettes and come back, just so they didn't have to pay the extraordinary amounts for cigarettes here.
Yeah, I knew people who went to the Meskwaki settlement to buy their cigarettes there because being as it's a Native American settlement, not quite a reservation, but close, you don't have to pay income tax, or you don't have to pay any taxes. Yeah. There's no state tax, no federal tax, nothing.
I think I've heard another way you can get around the cigarette taxes is by getting a pipe tobacco instead, and just packing cigarettes with that, because that's not really taxed the same, I don't think. But
it's taxed differently. I don't know. It's the taxes on tobacco and alcohol is really hard to parse out, because it's so different, even just depending on what you get.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like I think tobacco, chewing tobacco and snus are a different price than cigarettes, which are different price from cigars, which are different from pipe tobacco. Beer is different from liquor, and it's anyway. Side trail. But yeah, so I mean that's some of the complaints and stuff anyway, as we were talking about before, about wind turbines. I mean it's a growing industry across the nation. And on this map here, there's very few states that don't have wind turbines, and it's mostly southern states and Alaska, with the exception of New Jersey, Connecticut, and Rhode Island.
Yeah, we have no land for them, probably. I guess we do have some farmland here. We probably could have them here, I guess, but I don't know.
I know
so far.
I know in California, land developers have actually sued to prevent wind turbines from being put off the coast, where they would be the most productive, because it supposedly ruins the view.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually something that
$1 billion land developments.
Yeah. I was going to say, though, that's actually something that Donald Trump tried to deal with in Scotland at one point. He has a golf course, a golfing resort in Scotland, and off the shore there are some wind turbines in the water. And I think he was trying to fight the local government and the local people to get those things removed because they were tacky for his club and everything. But I don't believe they got rid of the wind turbines, thankfully. But, yeah. So that's the involvement that our president has with renewable energy in the past, at least. And nowadays, he's just trying to cut any funding for our renewable energy programs. And I found a story, I think it might have actually been from last year, the story that I posted to you guys earlier in the week, that it might have been part of the Donald Trump's administration's budget proposal. I think they were talking about it. They were considering cutting 70-something% of the budget for renewable energy programs federally. So that's where we stand in the federal government, at least, with these renewable energy proposals. I know we might want to just mention, at least before we get out of here today, some of the different energy systems that we have that are renewable energy. Wind, obviously, is one of them. And, we build these turbines, and they build bigger turbines to create more power. And the technology is actually advancing pretty steadily on it, where they can make them bigger and stronger. And it's pretty amazing what they're able to do. But there's also solar, like we've also talked about. And another one is hydro. And that's dams. Dams are one way. There's also current generators you can put into the waters on in the shore lines that go under the water.
Wave.
And there's also wave generators as well. There's two different ones.
Tidal barrages, which as the water, they don't generate much power per area, but you cover a massive area with them in like an estuary or something.
All right.
And then as the tide comes up, you get a huge amount of water that lifts up a very large generator. So you get power out of it that way.
Well, Mike,
tide
comes in, tide comes out. You can't explain it.
You can't explain that. Well, it's fun fact is that's actually drawing power from the moon, which I find is really cool.
Turns out we can explain that, unlike Bill O'Reilly. But the one thing that I thought was really fascinating was the wave generators. Like, I'd never seen anything like them, and they apparently can actually create a lot of power. They look like these giant like air tubes just sitting in the water, and they're all connected to each other. These big long tubes of these things in a line, and what happens is when a wave comes through, it actually the wave goes through these devices as well. And so the movement of these devices in that way creates power in the internal structure of it. I'm not entirely sure how, but it's magic to me. But
probably similar to how hydro dams work, or how dams work.
Yeah, there's some kind of like hydraulic system inside, that like when it moves and stuff that like creates
when the wind,
power in some way.
There's a tunnel which starts off quite wide and gets thinner as it goes along, and as the wave comes in, it will force air through this narrow gap, which is then connected to a turbine. Spins the turbine and you get power.
Yeah. But I mean, these are all very interesting and innovative ways to get power. And the plus side is it's renewable, unlike fossil fuels, which were literally burning dead things from the past. Sorry, you want to say something, Jordan?
I do. Just one that I believe we may have missed, which is geothermal.
Yes, geothermal.
Yes, which relates to the internal heating within our planet, and Iceland, for example, receives about a quarter of its energy.
Iceland again with this Jordan guy. He goes there on vacation one time, and now all he talks about is Iceland.
Hey, Iceland's an amazing place.
It does look beautiful. I would definitely go there in a heartbeat if I could.
I couldn't pronounce a single word of their name, like their place names, but
Reykjavik.
Fucking amazing place.
Reykjavik.
Reykjavik.
You got it. That's good.
That's how you say it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And all the other ones, Björkenjarg. Yeah, that's how you say everything else. I don't know, maybe not.
That's wow.
We'll cut that out. We'll cut that.
Yeah, let's cut that out.
But yeah, I think
I don't know.
Yeah, they receive about a quarter of all their energy from geothermal, and the other 75% of their energy from hydro. So they're 100% renewable. Their energy is produced 100% renewables, and yeah, it just shows that with a combination of these different methods can potentially produce a result that will, have a carbon neutral, environment. Yeah. Which should be great.
Well, the thing with geothermal is it's very situational. Not everywhere can have geothermal because not every place is going to have geothermal.
There is actually, if you're building a new house, there is actually basically a geothermal type heating system that you can actually put in, like beneath your house, which is actually pretty interesting and intuitive. I'm not sure how expensive it is to maintain over time, but it is definitely a much more cost-effective way to heat your house. If you're building a new house, that is. If you already have an existing building, it's very expensive to put it in because you literally have to go beneath the foundation.
An interesting thing that I actually learned recently from a documentary actually was before we actually moved to our current coal and oil-based power production, a lot of houses relied on essentially a solar panel type situation where they would pipe their water through these things, and that would heat up the water in the house. and they would have these giant panels on the rooftops, and everyone had those back then, before the turn of the century, I believe. And it was only after oil and everything became super, super cheap and much cheaper than other methods of doing these things that those panels and everything started going away in a lot of regard, unfortunately. Which was really interesting to me, that we were already going towards more wind and solar power for certain things, because you do realize also that in a lot of farms, especially grain farms and everything, they would have a windmill that would be using wind power to crush the grain and the wheats and everything into a fine powder and everything. We've been using solar and wind for a very, very long time. It's just because the oil industry and the coal industries wanted to make more money that we've kind of gone away from them. And now we're finally seeing a resurgence of that.
I'm not entirely sure about the solar part, because this is literally the first time I've ever heard about that, and I spent a lot of time looking at ancient architecture.
This was, I think, a Modern Marvels documentary that I will post in the description of this. So
okay, because yeah, I know a lot of, especially if we're talking about like ancient housing and building, they used to actually build partially below ground, specifically to get geothermal heat.
Yeah,
because the ground stays at almost a constant temperature year round. Plus, they would essentially try to minimize the number of walls they had to build, because that would that's a possible heat escape. So yeah. Because they were more concerned with keeping warm during winter than they were being cool during summer. But I mean, like, even if you look at houses and stuff built before air conditioning was a thing, they would build them in such a way that the air would basically circulate around the house. And it was much cooler inside than it would be otherwise. Like, I mean, the house I currently live in was built in, 1914? If we open the windows up in summer, and it's easily 10, 20 degrees warmer than it is outside when the wind gets blowing.
Interesting. Just
opening up the windows, just because of the airflow in the house, because it's how the houses were designed back then. Because you didn't have air conditioning; that wasn't an option.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, ethanol is also another one. Although as we said earlier, it's not as efficient as oil. But part of that's just because the combustion engine was designed with oil products in mind. And we really just need to find an alternate engine will work with a much more renewable energy. But I mean, all of these energies, they're good. And I think we have a problem, though, where we see them as purely environmentally friendly, and that is not actually the case, because all of these actually do have environmental impacts where they, in their own way, they do impact the environment in negative ways. Like, for example, wind turbines kill birds.
Kill birds quite a lot, and they use a lot of land.
Yeah.
Solar panels are made of rare earth metals, and they're called rare earth metals because they're rare. And so to mine them, you have to mine out quite a large chunk of land in order to mine them out. Now, it's not as bad as coal mining, I believe, but it is. It's still mining. It's not good for the environment.
Yeah. Plus, especially if you're not putting them on existing buildings or anything, because there's a lot of people who want to put them out in the middle of desert. Well, that impacts the desert ecology as well. Tidal and electric dams, or tidal generation, power generation, and electric dams also impact the rivers and the coastlines, and the ecologies there, which can be very delicate. I mean, it's a lot of, they have pros and cons. Yeah. Clearly better than our current methods with coal and gas. But at the same time, let's keep in mind that while they are better, they're not perfect, and they're not necessarily environmentally friendly, like not completely environmentally friendly is what I mean. Now,
an example of that, though, is the Hoover Dam. originally this thing was a modern marvel in its time. But one of the unintended consequences that did happen after it was the river. I forget, was it like the Colorado River, I think is, or I can't remember the river itself, the name of it at this point. But that river used to go all the way to the ocean, and I don't believe it does anymore because of the Hoover Dam and potentially other dams that have been put up in the on that lake or that river as well over time. So I do believe that has happened. I could be wrong on this actually, but
it is the Colorado River.
I'm almost positive
I mean, and
on
it's
that, at least.
Obviously also it floods the area too. So it creates these lakes. And like a lot of the dams along the Missouri River, they actually essentially, we talked about this in one of my American Indian Studies classes. It actually, the process of building a lot of these dams, I mean, yes, it provided flood control along the Missouri, but in this process, the way they placed the dams, they essentially stole land from reservations.
Yeah, dams flood a massive area of land behind them. So
yeah, so I mean, there's one of the reservations in South Dakota is essentially cut in two, and there's literally one place to cross the lake. So if you live on one side of the lake and you get sick and you need to go to the reservation clinic or hospital, you have to essentially, despite the fact it's literally right across the lake, you have to drive for about, 2 hours to get there?
You can't boat across it? Or
because you have to go to the nearest bridge.
Is there a way to get boats on there, or is that not a possibility?
It can be dangerous because of all the submerged stuff.
All right, okay.
So it can be very dangerous to cross these lakes because there is a lot of submerged stuff underneath. Like buildings. If it was previously inhabited, like a lot of these reservations were, because, why wouldn't you settle next to the river, right? Oops.
That's interesting.
Sorry, I just accidentally nudged my cat with my foot.
It's all right.
And also like trees and stuff like that too.
That is a trend that we may see in the future too, though, with a lot of our coastal cities. Actually, like Miami is getting more and more inundated, but with water every time they have high tide and everything, and it's just going to get worse and worse over time because of global warming. The sea levels are rising, the ice is melting, and those sea levels are just going to keep rising. And some of these cities are going to be submerged underwater completely.
Yeah, and it's not just a matter of moving the city further inland, because you're going to have all those buildings that essentially get abandoned, but they're underwater, which makes it a very treacherous approach.
Yeah.
So you then essentially have to go elsewhere to, actually land your boats.
Yeah, harbors are going to have to change sites.
Harbors are going to completely change because you can't just simply move the harbor further inland.
It's worth note for hydro as well. A lot of the time they don't actually generate power. They're just big power storage. So they move a lot of water up and then drop it again. So they're a bit iffy. Some of them don't, but some of them do, and they're a bit iffy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing of most of these different sources of power. There's always going to be drawbacks of everything. Everything has its benefits and its drawbacks, except for nuclear fusion, of course. But well, it remains to be seen what the consequences of that will be.
We don't yet know how to do it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that for now, but
affordably anyway.
Well, there might be some kind of downside to it eventually. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully, there's not a big one. But
I found a really good quote from actually an article that was posted in the Des Moines Register, and it's actually from the CEO of Mid-American Energy, which within the past maybe decade and a half invested billions in wind energy. And they were talking about the harmful side of, creating these farms in these areas that are designated for to produce these renewables. And he said, quote, "There's no perfect way to make electricity," and he eventually goes on to say that adding coal, natural gas, and hydroelectric plants all come with costs and environmental challenges. And yeah, I think that's like a good way of kind of viewing the whole situation, where it's like, yes, it does come with some damaging side effects, but it's going to have to be something we accept also have limits in terms of how destructive it becomes over time. Maybe we're more thoughtful about where we place these farms, and so yeah, it's such a great point. I mean, we've been addicted to coal and fossil fuels for over a century now, and now we're finally getting to a place where we can move on to a more sustainable and very logical process and source. Except with that, there are going to be downsides which we will have to accept until we were able to develop the technology to make it even safer for the environment. So
yeah. It's just, I felt like it was important to bring up the fact that despite all of the massive upsides of renewable energy, there are still some downsides that we often forget about. Especially those of us that, most people think of like deserts as dead things. It's not dead, but most people still think of it that way.
Yeah.
And
yeah, there's actually an ecosystem going on in the desert.
Yeah, there is.
There are terrifying things in the desert.
And that's just one example. Most people have no idea what various ecosystems look like or how delicate they are. And it's just something that I think education can help address. But it's also, there's pros and cons to everything. And yeah, so
yeah.
I think
another big, one last thing with another big problem when it comes to renewable energy sources like solar and wind. They're not reliable as a main power source necessarily. Yes. Which there are sunny days. There are also cloudy days where you're gonna not get so much sun. There's also windy days, and there's also days where you get almost no wind. So these things can some days not work at all. So you will always, in some ways, need a backup source of energy. And we've talked about it in the past. I personally think the only viable secondary source or main source like that is still nuclear fission. As dangerous as it can be and as scary as it can be, it's the only one that's as clean as the rest of these. There are zero emissions when it comes to nuclear power. It's just the nuclear waste itself, and you have to store it in a serious way, and we just never did so. And that's the biggest problem right now with nuclear energy. Mm-hmm. And the fear of meltdowns and stuff, which is not unnecessary in itself, because a meltdown is pretty scary. Let's be honest, but
it's not as bad as people think it is, and it's almost impossible nowadays.
Yeah, the technology is much better than it was in the 80s when we had the biggest meltdowns in history.
Well, Chernobyl, you mean as in
well,
the
I guess
only
Fukushima
meltdown.
As well happened recently. But,
wasn't actually a meltdown, but it came close.
Yeah. It was a partial meltdown.
The only actual meltdown in history was Chernobyl. But
yeah. Mostly partial and almost meltdowns, yeah. But
yeah, it's I forgot what I was gonna say. Thanks, Chris.
Sad. It's not my fault.
I'm blaming you.
I have a big, amazing brain, and it's amazing and big league. So
yeah, I mean, who knows what power generation is going to look like in the future? I think it's, and of course, that's what I was going to say. Of course, the main problem with energy in the United States right now is our aging infrastructure. Our electric grid is really old.
Yeah.
We are constantly patching it, but we're never actually really upgrading it. There's some communities that have really invested in fixing it and upgrading it, but the vast majority of us haven't. So, I mean, even if we produce a ton of wind energy here in the Midwest, we can't really transmit it very far because our infrastructure it's not going to work. Same thing like if, California produces a ton of solar energy. They can't really transmit it very far.
Yeah.
Yeah, you lose power for a distance. So
yeah, and that's part of our problem is we're not really investing in figuring out how to overcome those problems as well.
Yeah.
That and the fact that we just need to invest in our infrastructure. Period.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, coal and oil are much easier to transport than power itself. Electricity itself is much harder to transport. Is the idea here? Yeah.
And as well as like storing massive amounts of electricity for those rainy days or whatever.
Yeah.
That's also something we can't really do very well.
Yeah.
So there's hurdles to overcome. I mean, wind and solar and tidal and all that, they're great, but they're definitely better than what we're currently using mostly. But they're not, in and of themselves, they're not the solution to our energy problems. They're part of the solution.
Yeah. It's not the whole answer, it's part of it. Yeah.
They're not the whole answer. They're part of it. And any energy plan that doesn't include them going forward is, I think, not a really serious plan about the future.
Yeah. And with that, I think we should wrap this up, guys. We're definitely going to need to talk more on renewable energy and go in more in depth on all of these. I think that would be cool to do, and maybe we can actually look to get some actual academics in here and talk to us and explain these different types of renewable energies to us. That'd be kind of cool.
Wait,
we should do it.
Are you trying to replace Michael? Isn't that his job?
Yeah, we don't need him anymore. We're too big for Michael. He's just sad. No, he's just a physics major. He's not like a master of
I see how it is.
Power generation. I mean,
jeez.
Come on, who is he? But anyway, guys, we should, like I said, wrap this up. Anyone want to start us off with their last thoughts for the week? Let's start with Jordan.
As always.
I'll just throw someone under the bus.
I was going to say, as always, if you feel strongly about this, contact your politicians. And also, there are these community projects knocking about which maybe can put your money where your mouth is and invest in some of these. It might save you some money in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, did you have anything else to add before we get out of here?
Yeah, sure. Just be very aware of the end game here. And of course, it's a marathon, it's not a race, so things seem kind of sludgy and I guess
impossible. They can feel impossible.
Yeah, pretty much
and
right now. But exactly. But whether you know it or not, there are big moves being made behind the scenes that are pushing us towards this, this carbon neutral, future, and finally reduce our footprint and maybe even save all of humanity. But we'll see about that.
Yeah, we shall. I just have my FU for the week is going to be... No, you're not allowed. I was going to let you go last, I guess. I don't know. Because this is your show. If you want to.
Cut you off last minute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was my plan the whole time.
Of course you would.
No, but I was just going to give my FU for the week is Mark Zuckerberg. Just because, he was trying to be the messiah of the people for a while there, and he was like really garnering support to try and run for the presidency, it seemed like, in 2020. Recently, with the Cambridge Analytica stuff, he completely fell on his face in a lot of ways to a lot of people. And I'm just here to say that he has always been the piece of crap that we know him to be today. So, F you, Mark Zuckerberg. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay. And then I just kind of wanted to say that as far as being environmentally friendly, everyone can kind of do their part. Not everybody can invest in renewable energies and such, but you can start, just taking your own cloth bags to the grocery stores. I personally find it's easy to just fold one up and put it in my pocket, carry with me everywhere. You can, support like your local co-ops, or, just try to support brands that are more environmentally friendly. There's all kinds of things that you can do to at least do your part to reduce your own personal carbon footprint.
I think also,
look to see if your community has one of these community projects that you can buy into. I
just wanted to make a little note on those cloth bags. Those things are a lot more heavy duty than plastic bags a lot of the time, too. Oh, yeah.
They can carry a lot more, and they don't rip.
Yeah. That's just the one thing that I wanted to point out, because, those things are amazing compared to, like, plastic bags. You go to some stores, and those plastic bags are so thin that they'll rip by the time you get out to the parking lot. So,
although you're probably going to want to rearrange them in the bag, especially if you're going to be walking with it, because like the cashiers and people who actually put things in bags for you, they don't know how to pack things right.
Sometimes they
just don't. I always have to rearrange them because they just stack things weird.
Yeah. Oh well. But I guess
I also don't have a car and I walk with my stuff, so
yeah. I guess this week is over here, guys. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next week. I'm gonna forego the advertisements for our things, but they will be in the description.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
What? I don't get this. But anyway,
I don't
know. Watch the 1960s Batman series.
No.
Oh, that's so sad.
I've seen clips of it, and it is pretty hilarious looking. Like, like Batman hanging off a helicopter, and there's like a shark.
Yeah, that's from the movie with the bat shark repellent spray.
Yeah, that's just what I remember from that old cartoon, or not cartoon, but like the old live. You need to look it up.
At least watch the movie, even if you don't watch the series itself. With Adam West, it's like the only good thing he's ever done. No, I'm joking, but well, it was a sad day when Batman died.
Yeah, very sad day. But anyway, guys, you guys have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Bye.